So
So
I'm
Mighty Melbourne Stars is Heath,
so I'm the host of the podcast.
and
G'day,
I'm
how are
the
you?
Instagram account who was doing all the organising.
Excellent. Good
And
to meet you
obviously,
both.
we know. Yeah, it's great to meet you too. Obviously, we know who you are. Don't need to introduce you, but yeah, we'll get straight into it. I guess I've given you a little
Cool.
bit of a layout, but yeah, Heath, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so hi Melbourne Stars fans. Welcome to a very special episode of the podcast. This is my co-host.
Yeah, so I'm Melbourne Stars News, and we're lucky enough to have a very special guest joining us today, Blair Crouch, the General Manager of the Melbourne Stars. It's a pleasure to have you on, Blair. How are you going today?
Very well, thank you, boys. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all your support for the club. It's great to have people like yourselves, helping us with promotion and sharing news. So, we really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it's just something we've been doing for a while, and we love sharing the news with the fans and getting everyone's support around the boys and the club. How's your off season been? Have you been keeping busy in the office?
Yeah, it's always a good time of year, this one. We're sort of working with our commercial partners on how they'd like to maximise the relationship they have with us. We've had two sort of 3-hour sessions the last couple of days in really just sitting down and planning. Now that we know the fixture, it hasn't been released yet, but it will be coming out on the 9th of July for WBBL and the 12th of July for BBL. So we certainly know where we'll be travelling from October right through to the end of January. And what that does, it just gives us a bit of certainty around sort of the operational side of the business. We'll put a lot of
Yeah,
time now into
definitely.
thinking through, sort of what it looks like from a travel, train, play, rest point of view. And pleasingly, our fixture looks really good. I think we'll have some of the highest profile games from a TV and an attendance point of view this year, just the way the fixture's fallen for us. And the other one is player contracting. So I'm sure we'll get onto that today as part of our chat. But that certainly takes a lot of focus in the off season as we, really review how we performed last year. We obviously spend time looking at what we need to do from a list perspective and a lot of analysis to work out what's the right sort of plan of attack from here, not just for this year, but almost in a sort of a 3-year view of what the list should ideally look like. So that's sort of what takes most of our time this time of year.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously off season is a bit of a quiet time for us fans, but it seems like for you guys in the office, it's just about apart from the January period, it's just about the most important time of the year. Obviously getting a lot of trades and signings done. And yeah, that does, as you mentioned, that does kind of take me to our next point. About a week and a half ago now, we signed international Tom Curran. What are your thoughts,
Yep.
not only on Tom, but the new international signings, how we can sign people before the actual draft?
We were rapt to get Tom. To be honest, he was probably only one of 2 or 3 players that we made serious sort of inquiries about. And look, his skill set is something that is pretty unique. I mean, he gives us a lot with the ball and even with the bat. So we identified that he was a sort of player that we wanted, and there's something too about his level of competitiveness. He brings something to the team that I think all teams should have. Someone who's a real fighter, a real competitor. So the response from fans has been good. You don't always get positive responses from those who are most invested in the club when you make announcements about players, but overwhelmingly positive, which was great. But again, the process for that really started with analysing what we think our list needed. Peter Moores, our head coach, Clint Mackay, our assistant coach, and Ben Rohrer, our assistant coach, plus the analysts here, are very heavily involved in that process. And yeah, look, we were very happy to capitalise on the fact that you could now sign someone prior to the draft. And look, whether I agree with that or not, ultimately it was available to us. So we definitely took the opportunity. And today at 5 o'clock, we'll announce who our WBBL pre-draft signing is. And again, it's a sort of player who gives us something extra, something that we don't currently have, and someone who is a proven winner. And I think someone who will, importantly, really strengthen our list and help us win games of cricket.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know me and Heath were stoked to hear about the signing of Tom Curran, and a lot of the people who follow my account were also. I had a lot of positive feedback and thoughts about Tom, and that was absolutely incredible to hear that. Yeah, I think a lot of clubs have taken advantage of the early international signing kind of period. You know, obviously the Heat have signed Colin Munro. The Sydney Thunder have got Sam Billings now, and yeah, I'm glad that the Stars have taken advantage of it as well. Yeah, the list goes on, and it's only going to probably keep going on. But yeah, I'm glad the Stars have taken advantage of it. I think it's definitely a big step up. I think that depth will really help our bowling attack. But yeah, on the topic of international players, we have the number one pick for the second year in a row, which is incredible. Talk us through the whole process of the draft and the lottery, and how does the picks kind of work?
Yeah, the lottery is an interesting one. The reality is it is genuinely a lottery. It's split into two divisions, I suppose. So those teams that finish in positions 5 to 8 just have have their own lottery. And if you finish last, you get the most number of balls, and then it works its way up to 5th. We were lucky 2 years in a row to get pick 1. So I guess we've got to capitalise on that now. And it's interesting too. It's not just the platinum round where that really comes into play. One of the benefits for being up the order is in the second round. So once you've made your way through the platinum players, and I think most clubs will have made a pre-draft selection this year, so it'll be relatively clear what will happen in that first round. We'll be at the front of the queue when you get to pick, in the second round. So the first pick 9 in that second round. So I think that'll really mean that the best players in the world should still be available, those who have nominated for the draft, obviously. And look, we'll have contingency plans in place. Clubs will still have the right to retain a player if someone calls that player ahead of their pick. But we'll have a really clear list of players that we want to go after. And because we're at the front of the queue for the gold round, that I'm really confident that we'll get the player that we want. I think it's been a good initiative, and I think the benefit to the draft is, having the lottery now has meant that we've been able to go out to fans and talk about pick 1 and pick 4 for WBBL. It sort of stretches the PR around the Big Bash, and I think that's one thing that, as a code, we can do better. We can be talking about what's happening at the club 365 days a year, because, as you just said before, Jacob, ultimately we don't stop working on the club. There's always things happening. There's always things that we're looking to identify to improve. And the draft, and therefore all the talkability off the back of the draft lottery, means that we are talking about the Big Bash in June or July. And it gives us a chance to launch those international players. And hopefully for our fans, when they hear this afternoon who we've picked up in WBL, there'll be positivity coming through your channel and ours, that again, we've made the right choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had a lot of great messages from fans with the number one pick. There's obviously a lot of tension as to who we should pick. Obviously, the public don't have the official draft list yet, or the draft date, so that we still got a little while to wait. But yeah, that number one pick, as you mentioned, whether it's platinum tier or any tier, there's so many great players at either pick 1 or 9. So yeah, definitely trust you guys to lead our team in the right direction. That'll be awesome. Heath, do you have anything to touch on the draft? Obviously, me and you have been speaking a lot the past month or so as to who we should take: batter, bowler, all-rounder. Do you have anything to add to what Blair's just said?
No, I just I just agree with Jacob and what you guys are saying. It's fantastic. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, me and Heath have had a lot of discussion as to who we should pick up. Obviously, we thought about Rashid Khan, as we've tried previously a couple of times, but he has been retained. So I guess we'll quickly touch on the new retention kind of period that clubs can now retain players. I'm not 100% sure on the whole concept. Can you take us through that a little bit, Blair?
Yeah, sure. So there's always a retention window once the embargo period closes. So there's typically a period after the Big Bash final where clubs can't sign players at all, because that sort of gives Cricket Australia a chance to review the contracting rules to make sure that things are in place for the next set of tournaments. That went sort of for a couple of months this year, and then when it opens, you can retain your domestic players. For the Big Bash, you can only have 10 players on your contract list going into the final, and for the WBBL, you can only have 8 players on your contract list going into the final. So what that means is after the embargo lifts, we can then retain players who have played for us previously. And then probably more interestingly is when clubs look at trading players. We've been pretty active in that space the last couple of years. We've made a number of trades. Obviously, Zampa to the Renegades in return for Harper, Steckety out of Brisbane Heat. And in a couple of weeks, you'll see we've made a couple of trades within the WBBL. And really, that's just a good opportunity for clubs to look at what they need and to find a way in particular to bring players in. I'd love to see more player movement in the Big Bash. I think some of the stronger teams have been able to retain pretty much the same list year on year, which is often very similar to the domestic list that they have. And WA and Queensland the last couple of years have probably been the best examples of that. But I'd love to see a way to sort of encourage more player movement. I think it's good for fans. It increases talkability, it increases PR, and ultimately sort of changes the narrative a little bit. So that's sort of the window we're in now. We've got some domestic spots left, I beg your pardon, for both WBBL and BBL. So we'll be making some announcements in the coming weeks or sort of into August about who we've secured for those last spots, which then gives you time to really go back to the analysis and work out what we need at the overseas player draft. And again, I think the quality of players who have been down here the last few years, although there's a couple of challenges this year with clashes with some international cricket for WBBL in particular, I think it shows that the Big Bash is still it's a tournament that the best players in the world want to participate in. You just look, the last few years of the quality of players that have been here, and now I think the fact that we can sign players on a multi-year deal will mean that the competitiveness around player availability, around things like IL T20, around South Africa, sort of in that pre and post Big Bash window, hopefully it means that we've got even greater opportunity to secure the best players in the world, on top of hopefully the Aussie players once they've finished the Test summer. I think we'd all love to see Mitch Starc and Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood and the best Aussie cricketers playing in the Big Bash. So hopefully that's something that will continue to evolve as well, just to make sure we have the best tournament that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is the goal, just to continue to grow the league. Obviously, we have other leagues, pre and post Big Bash, like you've mentioned. Does that play a factor in who you select? Obviously, the IPL is pretty close to the Big Bash. Do you have to kind of look at those international signings and work out who you want to select due to their availability?
Yeah, availability is important, and I think any sporting team looks for cohesion. Looks for the ability to have, we kind of call it time on task. So the ability for us to build a list that is going to be fairly consistent, and we're not bringing players in and out, which can just sometimes upset the balance of the group. And we were, I guess, unfortunate last year with Harris Ralph, Osama Mir, in particular, who came into the squad. We'd signed them for a particular number of games, but then due to a change in circumstance with the PCB, they couldn't fulfil all of those games. So it just makes it challenging for us to sort of build this sense of cohesion or continuity. So availability, and in the case of Tom and the WBBL player that we'll announce this afternoon, the fact that they could commit to the 10 games plus finals was certainly a consideration, for all the factors I've just sort of outlined. And yes, that will mean once we go to the overseas player draft in September, availability or full availability of players will certainly be a consideration. Just because it really does allow you to create an environment that has a level of consistency and cohesion. which, the last few years we haven't really been able to quite nail that.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you for touching on that. That was explained excellently. Now, the main news that we've had this off-season before the signings was Glenn Maxwell stepping down as captain. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get very personal, and I'm going to, I'm not expecting perfect answers here. Obviously, you can't reveal everything, but talks on a new captain. Obviously, I'm assuming you're looking for someone experienced, or would you be looking for an international player with experience, or what are you kind of looking for in a new captain role?
Experience is obviously a relevant one. Look, we haven't made the decision on who will replace Glenn, but to Glenn's credit, we've sort of been talking about, what a succession plan for him might be as a player and as a captain for a couple of years. So it didn't come as a surprise to us that he said, I've played my role as captain, and now I can just focus on being the best player that I can be. And as we all know, when Glenn's at his best, there's no better in the world. So I had a call with Peter Moores this morning as I drove to the office. We sort of tend to catch each other early in the morning or late at night. He's obviously still in the UK, and look, we touched on the captaincy, but it's not at a point really where we've made a call just yet. But when we do, we're really fortunate to have a number of players as part of our domestic list who would be very capable of performing the role as captain. I'm not sure about an international player being captain. I think there's certainly a number of things in the lead up to, in preparation for the tournament, that's probably better suited to having someone on the ground. But we haven't made that call yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've had a number of messages when Glenn stepped down as to who I had thoughts on being captain, and I'll just say my top thoughts would either go to Hilton Cartwright, Marcus Stoinis, or Sam Harper, just due to their experience and being contracted domestic players. Me and Heath also agreed with that factor of just an international player sometimes, as you said, not their availability and the stuff happening pre and post tournament can be important. And one last thing I'd touch
if
on.
If we're either of those three, they're pretty good. They're three pretty good choices. You probably throw Bo Webster in there as well. So we are fortunate to have a number of players who we think ultimately could do a great job.
Yeah, 100%. And the last quick thing I'd want to touch on and get your thoughts on is obviously last season we saw a new fixture, a 10-game fixture. What are your thoughts on shortening the overall period of the Big Bash, and how do you think you guys need to kind of, I know you're not the coach obviously, but how do you think the players need to kind of change up the way they play in that tournament, whether it's, coming out firing and getting a lead early and not leaving it too late, or do you kind of see yourselves staying with the same game plan as previously?
You're right. I'm not the coach, and I would certainly never pretend to know the intricacies of what Peter and the coaches will end up coming up with from a game plan point of view. But rest assured, to all of our fans, that is happening now. I just had Clint Mackay in my office just then, and he's got a call with Peter Moores and Jonathan Batty tonight to sort of continue the conversation around clarity of game style, clarity of individual roles and responsibilities, just so we're really prepared to start communicating to the players really as early as sort of, now. The Victorian team are back here training at the Junction. So we do have access to a number of the Stars players already. And that conversation about what does success look like, not in wins and losses, but in more the process. So where are the areas that we didn't achieve our objectives last year? And you can break it down to phases of the game. You can break it down to individual performances. You can break it down to performance against the nominated game style. That work is happening now, and we'll be really clear once we lock that in. We'll be communicating that very early to make sure all of the players are really clear about what success needs to look like for us. And then, sorry, Jacob, the second part of your question.
Oh, it was just about what are your thoughts on the Big Bash narrowing down to 10 games?
Yeah, look. I was a little bit unsure about removing the 4 games last year, but I think strategically the reason for doing it was around having more games of consequence sort of dropping off the lower attended and the lower viewed games to ensure that, a more compressed season or a compressed tournament, I guess, was delivering against all the objectives. The challenge we had last year was the length of the tournament in the number of days was kind of the same as the year prior, because we had the big breaks early on because of the Perth test and something else I can't recall. But this year is the first year where it's actually in the right window. So it'll be from sort of that December 15 or so through to Jan 26, 27. That's probably the right length for the tournament to play the 10 games. There's enough regularity of games to keep, fans really interested. We won't have the big breaks in between games this year, which is great for fans. It's also good for players. In particular, if you're an international who's come down here to play in the Big Bash. Last year we played the Brisbane game, and then we had, we sort of had I think it was an 8 or 9 day break, which is not ideal for a tournament. What it did do, though, it did increase average TV audiences. It did increase average attendance. And I think it certainly worked from that perspective. So, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes this year. Crowds were back last year. We got a little bit unlucky with weather with our 2 Melbourne derbies, and some other teams lost games completely due to weather. So we hope that, we don't have the level of rain affected games this year. But all the metrics last year were really back to very strong levels, and certainly pre-COVID levels. So I think it's worked, which is good. The WBBL has made the same move, so that will be back to 10 games from the 14 this year. And again, I think it will be in a window that's appropriate for 10 games. So that'll be sort of late October until late November, sort of first week of December is roughly the time frame. I would have liked to have seen the WBBL remain at 14 games. I don't think there's enough opportunities for young professional female cricketers at the moment. If you're not playing in the Women's Premier League, if you're not playing in the 100, and you might be playing state cricket, the Big Bash is really your only opportunity to play T20 cricket at the level that obviously the Big Bash delivers. So I would have liked to have seen that remain at 14, but the decision's been made, and obviously we'll support that this year, including the new pre-season tournament, which will happen in sort of early October. And I guess we'll be looking at the metrics, and we'll see whether it's worked in the same way that it's worked for the men.
Yeah, I think that was very well said. Yeah, I personally think the season felt a lot more alive more recently. I know obviously it struggled during COVID, which is understandable. I mean, not just the Big Bash struggled through COVID. Every numbers dropped for a lot of different things. But I think this season I noticed the fans became more involved, not just with my account, but like just in general, a lot more people getting around the team. Obviously, we had an incredible 4-game win streak when everyone was really up and about. It was awesome to see from a fan perspective, and I hope that continues throughout the season with the shorter fixture, like you said, taking away those less viewed games and just kind of making every game matter, every game count. I think that's the goal. So that's kind of all the points I had to talk about this session. We've got everything covered.
Sure.
Heath, would you like to add anything about the podcast or our accounts or anything in general?
No, I just like how we just can appeal to the fans and everything, and share their opinions with us as well, and that's what we're all about for the podcasting.
Yeah, so we're just trying to get fans onto the podcast and have a great chat. We usually just do like game reviews and stuff and get everyone's thoughts in a positive way. So it's been great to see us start the podcast. A lot of people have loved that. So do you have anything else to say, Blair? Because I've covered everything.
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, as a club, we're really excited for WBBL 10, celebrating the 10th edition of the Women's Big Bash. So we'll be doing a lot of things in the lead up to that celebrate the history of our club and the role that we've played in the Women's Big Bash League, including allowing fans to pick a player of the decade, allowing fans to pick a team of the decade in a similar way we did with the Big Bash when that turned 10. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be launching soon. There's a lot of news coming. Obviously the fixture, July 9 for WBBL, July 12 for BBL, and memberships will go on sale on the 15th of July. So really from here on in, there'll be a lot more information being shared with fans, and we look forward to sending all the messages out in relation to who we sign for our remaining spots. We get aggressive at the draft table. On draft night, which is on Channel 7 for the first time this year. We get those last few spots locked away, and then we hit the tournament with some good momentum. So, looking forward to hopefully what will be a big summer for the Stars.
That's incredible, and I really look forward to hearing about all the WBBL and BBL news, whether it's signings, drafts, fixtures. I know the fans love it, and we love supporting the club. So, obviously, Blair, a huge thank you for giving your time today to come onto our podcast. It's not something we get to do every day, to talk to the general manager. We do appreciate these times, and I guess that's been everything for episode 9 of the Mighty Melbourne Stars podcast. Huge shout out to Blair and the Stars team. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Blair, for coming on.
Pleasure, Heath. Pleasure, Jacob. Thanks for all the support you give the club. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys. See you later.
See ya.